Hey, Tanisha. Are we just waiting for the board members to start?
We are waiting. Yeah, I'm checking.
Oh, I
with,
didn't see you, Jennifer. Sorry.
Yep. I don't think we have any of them here. I know Commissioner Lollinger will be 30 minutes late. Commissioner Slater Harrington will not be here today. Chair McFadden should be leading, so I'm just checking with him and Commissioner Kenyatta Bay to see if they will be here soon, shortly.
Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, is everyone able to
Good
hear me?
afternoon.
Is everyone able to hear me?
We are
Yep.
able to hear you, yes.
Great. I hope everyone is doing okay today. And please forgive my delay. Dr. Judkins, I know we have two commissioners that may be delayed today as well. Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, is he with us?
He is not. We just have you at the moment. And I've reached out to him.
I don't want to waste folks' time. And so we have two updates today, correct? One on a Masco update and the other on a literacy language update. Is that correct?
Good afternoon, Chair McFadden. The two updates today, there's a graduation goal update from Secondary Success and Innovation and a continuous improvement update. The math and literacy are scheduled for the December teaching and learning.
You're right, because I was already in the December, I'm already in December's calendar meeting. So yes, let's start with those updates.
Good afternoon, Chair McFadden. This is Eric Jefferson with the update on secondary success and innovation surrounded by, I'm sorry, I'm cutting my camera on. This is our graduation update. I work in the Office of Academics where Dr. Dabrowski is Chief Academic Officer, and I'm the Executive Director of Secondary Success and Innovation, and we are happy to be here today. So today we're going to ground The SSI work and board priorities are district goals, and in the blueprint, the Maryland State Blueprint for Success, the Kirwan Commission. Today, we're going to provide an overview of SSI core work. And that core work is college and career readiness, on track to graduation, post-secondary success, dual enrollment, career and technical education, secondary transition, mentor and adult relationships, and strategic scheduling. And then we're going to look at some of the new work that we're doing this year to get to that graduation goal of 76%. Of course, our work is grounded in our board priorities, but we really will be focusing on priorities 1, 2, 6, and 7 in today's presentation. And then we're going to really be focusing on that graduation goal, that more students will graduate within 4 years prepared to succeed in higher education or or in a career. So this is our graduation goal. By the end of school year 26-27, over 76% of our students will graduate within the 4 years prepared to succeed in higher education or a career by monitoring our 3rd grade literacy benchmarks, 6th grade attendance and pass rate, 9th grade promotion and GPA and attendance, and 11th grade attendance and promotion. So we want to frame this work that we're doing within what we call the Blueprint Pillar 3, college and career readiness. So the state came out and adopted new college and career readiness metrics. And so we want to ground our work within this new CCR standard that prepares graduates for success in college and the workforce. The Blueprint aims to have all students meet the CCR standard by the end of their 10th grade and develop CCR support pathways to support students in meeting those standards. And so what the state has done, you have 2 options to meet the CCR standard by the end of 10th grade. Option number 1 is to have an unweighted GPA of 3.0 or higher with a final course grade in algebra of an A, B, or C, and or proficient score in Algebra 1 MCAP assessment by the end of 10th grade. That is option 1 to meet the CCR standards. Option 2, you could be proficient on all MCAP assessments, whether proficient or above on both English 10 and Algebra 1 MCAP will also give you the identity of being CCR ready. And that way you can move forward in other pathways at the end of 10th grade. And so we want to ground our work, and this is how we ground our work as we are supporting the continuum of all learners. This is the puzzle pieces with CCR being in the center of what we do. So college and career, college and technical education, dual enrollment, mentor adult relationships, on track to graduation, the OTG work, strategic scheduling, and school counseling, and post-secondary success. So commissioners, this is our team. Like I said, my name is Eric Jefferson, I'm Executive Director. We have Michael Moss, who's Director of Secondary Support and Innovation, Eric Roberts, Director of Post-Secondary Success, Ahara Valentine's, Director of Secondary School Support, Sean Somerville, Director of Career Education, Career Technical Education, Shanika Herndon Johnson, who's Director of Academic Strategies and Support, Sophia Rudy Seal Holmes, who's the Manager of Mentoring and Adult Relationships, and Simon Beardbaum, who's the Director of Grading and Assessment and Scheduling. One of the key things that I would like to say about this team that we have, that all of us on this team have school-based administration experience, which I think it's a plus, is how we show up in schools in our continuous improvement mindset is habits and mindsets. We show up with improvement routines to get to that 76% and above, and really helping school leaders with supportive leadership and improvement routines. So as we go through this presentation, I just want a few questions that may come up throughout the presentations that, you know, we would want you to think about as we get to our question phase. And these questions are in the appendix. But, you know, a couple of questions that I'm going to start off with, and then I'm going to turn it over to Michael Moss. The first question I would have our commissioners and everyone on this call think about is, given the critical importance of ninth grade success as a predictor for high school graduation rate, what are some of the ways we could share the messaging about being successful in ninth grade, which will lead to higher graduation rates? And with that question, I'm going to turn it over to my director, Michael Moss.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Moss, Director of Secondary Support and Innovation. So we would like to share with you some of the successes that we've had over the past couple of years with our ninth grade on track to graduate work. As you can see here on the chart, we have seen a 10% increase in first-time ninth grade students being on track from school year 22-23 to school year 23-24. That is outlined by the yellow line on the graph. On a red line is all of our ninth graders, which we've seen an 11.6% increase over the same time period. Also would like to call out the fact that we have seen a 25% increase since returning to schools from the pandemic in both our first-time ninth graders being on track and all of our ninth grade students being on track to graduate. So to ground us in the definition of what being on track to graduate is, for the state of Maryland, that is inclusive of having credits in math, earning a credit in math, ELA, science, social studies, and/or world language. So just for clarification, the student would have to be enrolled in either social studies or world language, but not both. So the focus of our work for this school year is making sure that our schools, our in-school coordinators, on track to graduate coordinators, are having successful house and success team meetings on a consistent basis, making sure that our students are 100% enrolled in their courses that would meet the Maryland state guidelines for being on track, that it being inclusive of math, science, English, social studies, and/or world language. Making sure that we are facilitating meaningful student and adult relationships through our student learning plan, SLP tools. Making sure that our teachers are participating or practicing timely and accurate grading practices, and that is being supported by our partners in the Continuous Improvement Office this school year. And then also ensuring that we are doing consistent targeted learning walks, being facilitated by our district managers for On Track to Graduate and in partnership with principals and ILEDs. And so now I'd like to turn this over to our Director of Post-Secondary Success, Director Eric Roberts.
Thank you so much, Director Moss, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to start off by sharing some data from our amazing graduating seniors in Baltimore City Public Schools. So this is their post-secondary outcome data. So every year, our seniors self-report data in the Navient system. And so for the past 2 years, we've seen a steady increase in the number of students with documented post-secondary plans. So this is them indicating their interest in either the military, college, the world of work, gap year, whatever the case may be, they report that data. And so in the 22-23 school year, we have 43% of our seniors self-report that data in Navient. Last year, we had 64%. And so for the 24-25 school year, we're excited about our goal of having 85% of our students have post-secondary plans in Navient. Right. And then in terms of college aspiration and enrollment, last year in the 23-24 school year, 37% of our students or seniors aspired to attend college, and 31% of them actually self-reported as ending up with college as a final outcome. In terms of the work we do to support post-secondary outcomes, one of the things we're looking at this year is our school counseling to support effective secondary scheduling. So the way our scholars are scheduled in their classes to help them promote their way towards graduation, as well as helping support them with post-secondary experiences and outcomes. We have our wonderful post-secondary advisors at the school level supporting college readiness and access. And then we have our Career Coach initiative that we're thankful for through the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, and they're supporting the work as well. And then as we look at the focus of our work, we're exploring new approaches to increase student financial aid application completion. So the number of students completing the FAFSA so they can secure financial aid. We're looking at improving post-secondary enrollment data collection. We are also wanting to make sure that our students that aspire to higher education have viable options in targeted advising. And then we are increasing our professional development for middle school counselors because we know that the road to graduation does not actually begin in high school. It begins with some of the work that our amazing educators and counselors in the pre-K and to 8 and elementary and middle school settings take place. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Director for Secondary School Support, Mrs. Zahara Valentine.
Thank you for the warm introduction, Eric. I'm excited to talk about dual enrollment. As Eric Jefferson, the Executive Director, highlighted the College and Career Ready Standard, dual enrollment is a required pathway that enables students to earn both a high school and college credit at the same time. What's really important is based on the new state legislation, City Schools is required to ensure that students that meet the CCR standard have access to 2 dual enrollment courses per semester with a total of 4 credits altogether or 4 courses altogether. And our goal is to close the equity gaps by forming strategic partnerships and expanding access. As you can see here, we started off with 853 scholars in school year 22. Our goal is to make sure that we get to 1,305, and our focus is also making sure that we have more students that are meeting the CCR standard enrolled in dual enrollment courses. The institutions that we are partnered with are BCCC, Coppin State University, Johns Hopkins University, Morgan State University, Let's Go Bears, Notre Dame of Maryland University, Towson University, and University of Baltimore. I just get really excited about Morgan State. These partners support more than 1,000 City School students that are engaged in our dual enrollment courses. The focus for our work with moving forward is that this is going to be legacy work, which means that we have to support oversight and collaboration that includes student input for dual enrollment and vision setting. Any student or family that is interested in dual enrollment should partner with their school counselors at their school sites and with their administrators. We're also working really hard to identify ways dual enrollment can expand academic and career-focused coursework, not just for students meeting the CCR standard, but for those that are not as well. And we're going to continue to connect with college and career experience. We're going to continue to connect the college and career experiences and counseling to ensure that students have those wraparound supports. I'm going to go ahead and kick this over to Sean Somerville, the Director of Career and Technical Education.
Thank you, Director Valentine. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Somerville, Director of Career Readiness. Our work in career readiness centers around Maryland's blueprint goal to have 45% of students complete a registered youth apprenticeship and or obtain an industry recognized credential before graduating by the 2030-2031 school year. Here are some of our highlights from 2023-2024 and CTE. 1,471 CTE certification exams were given. Of those exams given, 760 students passed their certification, which is a 30% increase from the 22-23 school year. That's 5 times more students who earned a certification in June 2023 to June 2024. And 1,617 students completed their CTE pathway as of June 2024, which is a 45% increase from school year 22-23. In middle schools, college and career readiness is counseling, coaching, college and work-based learning experiences for early exposure to position students to choose a pathway that matches their interests. At every grade in middle school, students are exposed to college and career readiness activities. Every 6th grader has a college experience, every 7th grader has a CTE experience, and every 8th grader has a company tour and or job shadow experience. Other activities that our middle school students are engaged in included but not limited to CTE demo days, our high school choice fair, Edmentum exploration modules, and one of our largest initiatives is Youth Work Summer Employment. The focus of our work, so all CTE pathways in Baltimore City are aligned with a state-approved industry-recognized credential. So we are currently working to make sure that every single pathway in Baltimore City schools aligns with an IRC offered by the state. We are expanding CTE pathways, internships, and apprenticeships opportunities to students in all Baltimore City schools. And we are working on increasing teacher certification by enhancing the quality of teacher professional development to increase student certification pass rates. Well-prepared teachers result in well-prepared students. I would now like to pass it over to Dr. Shanika Herndon Johnson, Director of Academic Strategy and Support.
Good afternoon, everyone. Secondary transition services are exclusive to students with disabilities. Those that have an IEP are required to have secondary transition services, which are a coordinated set of activities that allow students with disabilities to meet post-secondary success. Those activities also align to post-secondary goals that are aligned to their annual IEP goals, which are updated annually. COMAR indicates that students with disabilities ages 14 and up are required, whereas IDEA requires students ages 16 and over to have secondary transition services embedded in their IEP. We are aligned to indicators, MSDE indicators 1, graduation rate, 2, dropout rate, indicator 13, secondary transition, IEP transition section, and then also indicator 14, post-school outcomes. And so, of course, that is the focus of the work of secondary transition, to work with other offices to make sure that we are providing those inclusive practices and that those activities are happening in schools internally and externally. So we collaborate with external partners to ensure that our students with disabilities get those services. During the pandemic, we realized some major gaps. Our students were leaving the district, and we realized a lot of them were leaving to go to work. As we know, a lot of students with disabilities, ages 18 and older, they can stay in school till they're 21. A lot of them do. And so we realized that the industry, they're 18, they're grown. In the school district, they're not. We don't honor age of majority. They're still minors in our district. And so what did we do? We decided to hire a job developer specifically to design and customize external partnerships so that students with disabilities who are not typically eligible for work-based learning opportunities because they need a full schedule, to partner with external companies so that we can provide those job development opportunities for them, not necessarily internships or apprenticeships, but experiences and exposure to get them career ready so that they can be successful after high school. We went from 0 partners to more than 20, and some of our partners are highlighted on the slide. Colleges and community. The focus of our work is to continue to expand those inclusive practices, and I emphasize the word inclusive. As you can see, although I work in the Office of Teaching and Learning, also I collaborate with special education and secondary success and innovation. I'm so glad to be here with this team because we are expanding inclusive practices and opportunities specifically around job development and also with school counselors and scheduling courses of study to ensure that all of our students, inclusive of those students that have meet those profiles that are not receiving a diploma, like our life skill, our PAL, our students with those most significant cognitive delays, to also ensure that they meet post-school success as well. And then finally, to deepen the collaboration, not just with the Office of SSNI, but also with other district offices and schools so that we can make sure that we are including all students in the continuum of learners to support post-secondary readiness and transition for students with disabilities and beyond, all diverse learners. I am happy to turn the next slide over to my colleague, Dr. Rudy.
Thank you. Grateful for your time today. So I lead the work of mentoring MAR, guided by the belief that every student deserves a mentor. As you'll notice that we've seen substantial progress last year. 40 of our schools budgeted for student mentoring for the school year. We served 981 students with 985 mentors across 14 schools. So that's 12 high schools and 2 middle schools. You might have even seen our recent Channel 11 news segment where we featured Booker T. Washington students and their district mentors in the Success Mentor program. We've seen growth with our mentoring program options. We're actively supporting programs with their school integration practices, which is a big deal, in collaborating with Bloomberg Associates on our stakeholder engagement strategy for 25-26. So as we expand and we look at what the focus of our work will be, expanding student mentoring with the goal of 100% student access to mentors by 27-28. This year, we're on track for 5,000 students to access mentoring. Our aim is to support 100% of our schools as a resource through our consultancy protocol. Schools are beginning to engage MAR in 3 functional areas: mentor recruitment, onboarding, school capacity building, and programming guidance support. Our protocol aims to enhance SPP outcomes via student-driven participatory methods, as well as informed partnership engagement practices, which you'll note in our opportunities analysis report. So remember, student mentoring is one of the few prevention and intervention strategies that can effectively address multiple risk and protective factors simultaneously. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to pass it on to my colleague, Simon.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Simon Birnbaum, Director of Grading, Assessment, and Scheduling. In order to make sure that students have the chance to take advantage of these amazing opportunities that my colleagues have discussed, we're making sure to support schools with strategic scheduling that helps them align their resources with their priorities. And this is work that's been going on in earnest for the past couple school years now. At the high school level, this means standardizing how classes are offered across the district, helping schools analyze their subgroup data to ensure that all students have access to advanced coursework, and strategically sequencing courses to support completion of math and ELA requirements. We're also beginning the process of standardizing courses at the middle school level and increasing opportunities for middle school students to earn high school credits, thereby making it easier for those students to be ready to access advanced coursework when they reach the high school level. The focus of our work is on aligning pathways that lead students to success in post-secondary endeavors, whether that's through post-secondary education with dual enrollment or the world of work with internships and CTE pathways. We're also making sure that all students from all schools have opportunities for advanced coursework with a focus on providing supports, especially for those underserved students. And finally, we are reviewing the elementary and middle school grades, the middle grades model scheduling in partnership with the continuous improvement team.
Well, thank you, team. So as we move forward, I want to reiterate a couple of questions before we get to the end of the presentation. We heard about ninth grade success. We've heard about our CTE pathways. We've also heard about our post-secondary success. And so what we are looking for and some thought partnership around, asking ourselves, how more effective can we be to inform our community and engaging and supporting our post-secondary success initiatives and all of our CTE initiatives. So as we move forward and as we are moving towards that 76%, City Schools increased its graduation rate by 1.9 percentage points, reversing the downward trend and rising above 70%. And we are aiming and we're on pace to have that 76% by SY 26 and 27 school year. So our pathway forward in the Office of SSI is to create CCR pathways for students who do not meet the CCR standards by the end of 10th grade. We are establishing CCR teams at every high school and middle school that includes our career coaches, post-secondary advisors, school counselors, assistant principals, and our on track to graduate coordinators. We are evaluating initiative effectiveness and identifying equity gaps. We're also reviewing and revisiting relevant policies to support the implementation and expansion of these SSI initiatives. And we're providing targeted professional development for our career coaches, counselors, CTE teachers, OTG coordinators as we begin to work together as a team. And so that concludes our presentation. Thank you. And are there any questions or any thoughts around the questions that we did ask before the presentation? I have the questions here in the appendix as well.
Thank you all for the presentation, and thank you, each of you, for your commitment and your dedication to City Schools and our students. Before I even think through some of these partnering questions, what are you all noticing as some barriers? If you all could just illuminate this a little bit more for us. What are some of the barriers that are preventing our students to graduate on time? What are some of the things that you all are noticing system-wide? I know we have former principals here and folks that are really committed to this work. What are some of those barriers because there's great work that's happening, and you all are highlighting some of the great things that are happening. And while we've seen a small increase in our graduation rate for the past several years is generally around the same place. And so what are some of the barriers that we're noticing that align to, these initiatives? Because that slight increase is a good, growth. We celebrate the growth, but we want to sustain that growth, right, over time, so that we really hit the goals that we have. We really want to exceed those goals. So if anyone could just color some more of that in for us, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I can start, Chairman Fadden, and thank you for that great question. One of the hurdles that we did overcome a couple of years ago was creating a master schedule and going to the 4x4 block of scheduling. And so now we are in the process of working out those details with the CTE courses that were normally year long, now that they're semester long, and how we're partnering up courses together to give students year-long courses that they may earn 1 or 2 credits in within our new 4x4 schedule. I think that was a big hurdle that schools were doing. Some schools had a 6-period day, some students had a A-day, B-day, and really consolidating that and becoming, one bell schedule across the district. Now we're looking at courses that we are matching together that students will be able to earn 1 or 2 credits in the course, and these are CTE courses. These are some of our ELA courses and some of our Algebra 1 courses. So for an example, approaches to Algebra 1 and Algebra 1 takes it first semester. They'll take approaches to Algebra 1 first semester, then they'll take Algebra 1 second semester. They'll earn a math elective credit, and then they'll earn their Algebra 1 credit second semester. But that kind of prepares them for MCAP. It prepares them to get through some of the scope and sequences of high school. And the second thing that we are really looking at is our promotion regulation and our graduation regulation within city schools, and really taking a deep dive into our scope and sequences of courses and what courses are needed based on MSDE, COMAR regulation graduations, based on what city schools require, and kind of matching those things up. So I think when we start looking at, that alignment piece, we'll start seeing that number not only sustain, but we start seeing that number grow as well.
I can chime in for students with disabilities, if I may. One thing, as a former school counselor, and then just being on an admin team from the schools and to district office as secondary transition coordinator, now acting director for academic strategies, strategy and support. The one thing that I do know, and I know Chief Dabrowski may be on the call, I'm totally an advocate of the push for allowing special education academics, or the academic for students with disabilities to live in teaching and learning, simply because one of the gaps that I did notice that does impact our graduation rate are twofold. In my opinion and my experience for this population of students who are on diploma track. One is the lack of students being able to read, and so a lot of students get and matriculate on, and then there are those instructional gaps, and with students not being able to self-advocate or identify their own needs and be able to articulate their needs, they typically just leave, and they'll wait it out. And then when they become of age, as I mentioned in the presentation, in the world outside of the school walls, they are legal at 18. Inside of the school walls, they aren't. And so people hire them, and once they begin to work, that then becomes another gap. And so they find success when they're working, and then we have to then re-engage them. And then so we're trying to now go back and start really looking at how we can fill those instructional gaps so that when they do get into high school and they're earning those credits and they're meaningful, they're engaged. We allow them the opportunities that they'll get to keep them engaged, like through job development experiences, work-based learning, apprenticeships, internships, those summer programs, the youth works, the partnerships that we had, so that we keep them engaged once we fill those instructional gaps so that they can graduate with their cohort and we can increase those graduation rates, which will in turn reduce the dropout rates. And so those gaps for me are twofold when it comes to our students with disabilities.
Thank you very much for that. Did anyone else want to chime in? Great. So I appreciate you all lifting that. Very important to us with those on track to graduate positions also that we have been seeing come through and approving. We know that that is a strategy, supporting you all's work as well in the work of the district. And so just as board members, we are constantly thinking through, ways that we can just do better. As we're in, continuous improvement. And if things aren't working, it's not always let's get rid of a thing, that sometimes figure out, how can we refine this thing so that we can make steady progress and improvement. We can make data say whatever we'd like for it to say, whatever we want for it to say. But for me, and I know for many others, it's important that our children are well. It is also important that they are competitive once they leave us, that they can, get jobs and they can, be successful wherever they choose to go beyond city schools. And so that's really important for me. I'm not sure if any other commissioners have joined, but I definitely want to lift. There was a question around partnerships, and what I didn't see was much highlight around the arts. And what we do know is that the arts, especially for Black children, Black and brown children, but especially for Black children, increases their attendance in schools. It helps them to synthesize almost every content area that exists. You're able to do that rigorously through the arts. And I know that we do have a fine arts strategic plan, but a lot of the work we've been seeing over the past several years has really been focused on the K-8 band and less on the high school band. And there are fine arts credits that students have to earn in order to gain a diploma, from our schools. And so I'm interested to know how we are leveraging our arts partners in a strategic way to support the work that you all are doing. But to increase attendance, right? We know that attendance is a thing. We need our kids in school so that they can learn and get what they need, right, to get. And we know that athletics is another, but we know that fine arts is a very rigorous, the fine arts are very rigorous in their approach to not just involving students, but helping them to grasp concepts that they may not be able to grasp in other ways. And I know that many of you are familiar with the arts and arts education. And so I'm curious to know how we're prioritizing that, what our plan is to prioritize that, because I'm almost certain that we will see even more of an increase in our student success rates and their outcomes if we're more strategic and intentional about how we are incorporating arts instruction into what we're doing as well.
Thank you, Chair McFadden. We will definitely take it and really start setting up meetings with our art department, looking at the strategic plan in art and really moving forward. That is, thank you for that piece there, and we will definitely be moving forward in that work.
Chief McFadden, we did, Chair McFadden, we did partner with two studios. Students were interested in music production, and so we piloted with BDS, Baltimore Design School, and also Achievement Academy. at one of our AOP schools. And we did, they did increase attendance. So I echo your sentiment. We based it off of their interest on their IEPs. And we do have a montage video production that we could share that the partners put together that the students actually produced themselves. I totally agree, and we can expand, and we are working with DIA and Fine Arts as far as OSC, and we'll definitely expand that. We're definitely breaking down silos so we can collaborate and share the wealth, so our students will definitely succeed. And I totally echo what you're saying at the high school level. It's working.
And I will share that in CTE, we do have interactive arts media production. So we have pathways in the arts for visual media production and graphic design for students.
And I will share with Mara, as we meet with different mentoring programs, that is part of what we've been talking about. A lot of the work is helping to support organizations with how they partner with the district. And so we do a lot of coaching conversations and helping them get through the technical piece to ensure that they're aligned with our policies and able to do the work. Because we absolutely know, as a bachelor's of music person, we know the transferable skills that arts can be foundational in helping our young people navigate complex systems. So definitely heard.
Yes, and we will definitely be looking for ways to expand upon the good work that we're already doing.
Yes.
Thank you. You know, this isn't taking anything away from the work that you all are doing. We've got to enhance, right? We've got to, because our children deserve it, right? And that has to remain the focus of all of what we do. It's very important. You know, I know that there are some high school principals, for whatever reason, are not as close to the fine arts guidance as some others when it comes to even staffing. And so, right, you've got to have the right staff, certified staff in buildings, you know, in order to ensure that our students have the access to the credit-bearing courses that they need to have exposure to. So I appreciate it. I don't want to belabor the moment, but I definitely want to make sure that that is on everyone's radar. Not only is it important to me, I believe in this for our children. And so if we can hear updates, you know, along the way about it, I might appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair.
Everyone. Yep, absolutely. Have any other commissioners joined before we move on? I know we have another presentation and we also have a couple of procurement items.
We have not had any other commissioners join.
Great. Thank you all for your time and your commitment, your dedication. Please forgive me for not being on camera. I am in transit. I have to present at a conference tomorrow. And so I appreciate your work, your dedication, and please keep up the great work. And we look forward as a board to hearing about more of the work to ensure that our students are well, but also that they are graduating as close to on time as possible. So thank you all. Are we ready for the next presentation?
Yes, Chair McFadden, I think we are ready.
Great. Hi, Dr. Wu.
Hi, how are you? I think
Okay.
Amy is pulling up the presentation. Good afternoon, Chair McFadden. We are going to do an update on continuous improvement. I'm joined here by Amy Winchester, the director, as well as Zach, who is the manager for the continuous improvement team. So I'll just jump right in because I know we are a little bit behind on time, so we'll try to move quickly through our presentation. So this is just a reminder around the way that we think about continuous improvement here at Baltimore City Public Schools. We usually use it as a structured approach to really help identify and solve like meaty, complex problems. And it's an approach that we're trying to scale and spread to different bodies of work throughout the system as we've been kind of trying to incubate it in different spaces. This next slide shows the kind of structure that we use when we're talking about continuous improvement at city schools. The left-hand side is really the strategy component where we've helped different teams think through root causes for a particular challenge, think about how they will improve upon it, what measures they will use, and what strategies they will use, and being really deliberate about capturing that as a way to start off the process of continuous improvement. And then the real meat of continuous improvement that we've been working through is the right-hand side, which we call the doing component, which is really the engine. And that's the PDSA cycle that we have been using in the different bodies of work that we've been applying continuous improvement to. And that's really being very diligent and following through on all 4 parts of that cycle. You will see that kind of throughout the different pieces we're going to talk about. In terms of our continuous improvement strategy for this year, and we've been doing this work now for a couple of different years in different areas of the system, and we found that it's really important to have all 4 of these kind of strategic components as we think about how we scale this work across the system. So one, the top left-hand corner is really about building the skills and the mindset and shifting mindsets to think from a continuous improvement kind of mindset. So that has meant really providing professional learning for folks to understand what continuous improvement is, what the concepts are, what the components are, the questions to think through, the things that they should be working through to approach a problem from a continuous improvement lens. And then really about practice, giving folks an opportunity to really work through that PDSA cycle, supporting them through it so that they complete the full cycle in a short amount of time. And then in addition to that, the bottom right hand of this square is really about the kind of infrastructure that we need to build into the system to really operationalize and scale this across the system, right? And there's 2 parts to that. There are the systems and routines that we need to put into place. That PDSA cycle, I think a lot of folks think that they're doing the PDSA cycle, but then once you dig in, they're missing certain components of that. And so making sure schools or offices really get to a routine and have systems for how they are making sure they're going through each of those steps and thinking strategically is really helpful as we're thinking about scaling continuous improvement. And then the other really important part of that is making sure we have the data for it. And one of the things that we have talked a lot about is that there's different types of data. And, I know Chairman McFadden referenced data earlier in the previous presentation. There's data for accountability to understand what happens at the end of us doing something, but then there's also data for improvement, which is very different. Data for improvement are the things that you're looking at along the way to understand whether or not something is working and leading to your ultimate goal or outcome, right? That's very different data. And so that is something that we do a lot of work around to help folks think through what is that data for improvement that you should be looking at to understand whether something you're trying is actually working or not. So we found that all 4 of these components are really important as we continue to work to scale continuous improvement across the system. And so this slide, before I turn it over to Amy, shows a number of the key areas where we have been working to embed continuous improvement into how teams and schools are doing the work that they do. So we have done, if you start on the right-hand side, professional development for district teams. We've been working with Cabinet on progress monitoring around indicators. And we also have certain improvement projects that certain offices have reached out to us to ask for support on from ECT and community schools. And then we have 4 different things that are more at a school level on the left-hand side here. And we talked about attendance actually at the safety and wholeness meeting last month. So we won't be digging into that today, but what we will now dig into are the 3 kind of more academic teaching and learning focused kind of projects that we are working on. So that's the math work, the 9th grade on track work, which you've heard about just the earlier presentation, as well as on secondary writing. And so to help us dig into that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy, who's going to talk first about the math work.
Thank you, Jenny. So our newest improvement project that we launched last year in partnership with the Office of Math as well as CLN3 is our Math Improvement Network for Teachers, or what we refer to as the MINT Fellowship. This year, we have 27 teachers who are participating. All of them are teachers in grades 3 through 5, and they're participating across 12 schools in CLN3. And the goal really has been over these last 2 years to increase students' automaticity of math facts, but also to provide students with a toolbox of math strategies. So those two things coupled together, really building their fluency in math and ultimately being able to successfully engage with higher order or harder math problems as they go through their journey in elementary, middle, and then high school. Last year, our teachers started testing some initial fluency protocols in late winter, early spring, and we launched this year in September with our 27 teachers testing those out in their classroom based off what we learned and the iterations that we made over the summer. And one of the things we learned last year was that when our teachers try to implement these fluency changes in their classroom alongside the curriculum, we saw that it was happening in various parts of the instructional block. And so what you see here is from last school year, every row represents one of our teacher fellows. And so you can see, for example, on the top row, this teacher had a total of 836 minutes that they documented that they were doing fluency across the course of our testing that happened from February to May. And then the colors represent where they were able to integrate those fluency changes. And so for that teacher in particular, we see a lot of it happening in other parts of their instructional block that we hadn't particularly identified. And so what we noticed was that there's a lot of variation, but that it looks like there's a lot happening in small group time, as well as for schools last year who were all doing Eureka, they were using the fluency components and space within that instructional block to do these changes as well. And so that really helped us to understand how small group time could be a key lever for as we think about providing students with this additional support in how to build their fluency, specifically around how they can build their math fact automaticity, but also how they could build up these tools and strategies that could really help them in growing that. The other thing we did as we started to learn where this might be happening in the instructional block was what exactly is happening as students are learning their way to becoming fluent mathematicians. And so we went into schools that are currently doing things like rocket math and other types of interventions in their school around math facts. And we wanted to understand, what are they doing? What does it look like? But also, how are the students experiencing it? And through those observations in schools, but also learning from teachers, learning from principals, what we started to notice emerge was what we call, which is our current working theory of the continuum for growing fluent mathematicians. And this is our best understanding right now of what exactly might happen for students as they're growing along this continuum. And so we noticed that students often started with growing automatic in their friendly number math facts. So things like their ones, their twos, their fives, their tens, their threes, when we think about multiplication. We noticed that a lot of teachers were using skip counting and repeated addition strategies as a way to help students build their automaticity here and to be able to automatically recall those math facts so that they didn't have to always kind of go back to one of those strategies, and they could do it more quickly and efficiently. And then we noticed that as students kind of graduated from that stage, they then started to work on that kind of automaticity or becoming automatic of all their math facts up to 10. And teachers started to introduce break apart to multiply and compensation, two new strategies that really helped to support students at this stage. And ultimately, once students got to multi-digit multiplication or division problems, we noticed that in addition to break apart, there were some additional strategies that were introduced for students, because at this point, students were not only utilizing what they now were automatically doing with recalling their ones, their fives, their tens, but they were also using those strategies when they were finding themselves addressing a multi-digit problem that maybe they wouldn't know how to do mentally. And so what we were learning was that through this continuum, students were starting to not only build their capacity to recall these math facts, but they now had a toolbox of strategies that could help them to solve these multi-digit problems that they might experience as they were getting into the 5th grade or beyond. And we also recognized that this had to happen and there had to be opportunities for this learning to occur with repeated practice, but also with modeling and reasoning problems. So it couldn't just exist in giving students a problem and having them do it. They also had to build some of those critical thinking skills through seeing these problems in modeling and reasoning contexts. And so as we learned about this continuum, which is our current theory, we had to think about how we were going to measure progress and signals, to Jenny's point of having that data for improvement. And so because we had our secondary literacy work that we had done years prior, we learned a lot about this idea of having this practical measure, which we kind of equated to the oral reading fluency measure in literacy, that could give us a quick signal as to how students were doing and where they were within this continuum. And so we developed, alongside our analytic partners, the the multiplication, division, and fluency assessment, which we call MDF. And essentially the MDF is like an ORF assessment. It's 3 minutes, students take it, and it gives us some indication of where they are along that continuum. Are they still learning their friendly math facts? Are they working on the automaticity up to 10s? And are they graduating to now using their kind of knowing those math facts alongside those strategies to do multi-digit problems? And so this is just an example of what our initial MDF looked like. We've iterated on this over time. And what we've learned from this is that it gives us the ability to understand how students are moving on that continuum, but also how they might be applying those strategies to help them solve some of the problems that they might not automatically know. We wanted to, of course, look at this assessment against things like iReady, because we know that iReady is predictive of MCAP. And what we found last year is that it was moderately predictive. So for us, that was a good start. But we are continuing to iterate on this assessment so that we could have a better signal of what this might mean for students when they do go to take an iReady or an MCAP assessment. And so this year, our 27 teachers are administering the MDF to their students every month on average, which is going to give us a more frequent signal of how our students are doing when it comes to being able not only to master those strategies, but also to become automatic and fluent in their math facts. And some of the things that we learned in doing this fellowship with our teachers and focusing specifically on what it means to be fluent in math is that our teachers really appreciated having regular routines to reflect on what they were testing. They found that really impactful because oftentimes they felt like, hey, sometimes we just have to roll things out and we're not really giving the opportunity to reflect and to tweak and iterate. And so they found that to be most impactful. And in addition to talking to our students, we found that they had more confidence to engage in math activities in the classroom. A lot of our students last year talked about how they looked forward to doing this with their teachers that they were engaging in these fluency activities with. But it also empowered them to be able to have some student agency and being able to say, I have a toolbox of strategies that I can now use if I approach a problem that I'm not entirely sure how to solve, which of course we also saw that this reinforced number sense, especially through that repeated practice, like a Rocket Math or a TAI reinforces, and that we saw originally when we first started this project. And there's a video here. I would definitely encourage you to go back, and some of our teachers just kind of reflecting on the impact of the fellowship as they experienced it last year. I'm going to move into 9th grade on track and talk a little bit about what we're doing this year and build off some of the things that Michael Moss spoke to earlier, which is that we know that we're seeing an improvement in students who are on track to graduate. We're also seeing an improvement over the years of our first-time ninth graders who are promotable, meaning that they're meeting our promotion requirements in order to promote to the 10th grade. So we're seeing signals that our students and the work that we're doing in ninth grade on track is leading to improved outcomes in our schools for our students in particular. And so our goal this year, particularly with the improvement work that we're doing in partnership with the Office of Secondary Success and Innovation, is that we want to increase that number of first-time ninth graders who are on track to graduate by the end of their ninth grade year. And so that should put us, as Eric Jefferson said, at 76% as we think about where we were last year. And so we've partnered with the Office of Secondary Success and Innovation for the last few years, since 2020, 2021, around this ninth grade on track to graduate work. It's actually been part of a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant that we were awarded back then. And so this year, when we were thinking about how we wanted to utilize the continuous improvement principles, we really kind of came to the realization that it made a lot of sense to focus in on bringing these reflective cycles that we've been doing in other areas like math, like secondary literacy, to ninth grade houses to allow teachers the opportunity to reflect on their grading practices and how that impacts students. And so that's what we've been working on with the On Track to Graduate coordinators since the beginning of the school year, as well as having On Track to Graduate coordinators really kind of understand their current system around grading practices and how that impacts teachers. And so some of the things that we've learned so far through just kind of understanding the system is that 100% of the coordinators have communicated the grading and assessment policies with their teachers in their ninth grade houses. 100% of schools have set an expectation on the minimum number of grades, which is really coming from the district's guidance and policy that has been put out for this school year. And reassessment practices, we're seeing that they vary widely. There's a lot of different considerations that schools make when they consider what this looks like for them in their schools. We also, in talking to teachers, empathy interviewing them, they reported that grading policies are consistently communicated to their students, sometimes in whole classroom settings, other times when they're having one-to-one conversations with students in particular. And then our students reported that when we talked to them, that they are motivated by grades and that they do utilize Infinite Campus on a regular basis to kind of keep up to date on where they are and what their progress is. And so a lot of really great learning that has given us the opportunity to continue to dig deep and invite teachers into the reflective cycles that we've been doing through these PDSAs in other areas of the organization. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zach, who's going to talk a little bit about our secondary literacy work.
Thanks, Amy. As part of a larger effort in the district spearheaded by Chief Dabrowski, we're really investigating writing practices this year as part of the strategic plan for literacy, and trying to make this year a learning year so that we can find some best practices and expand them a lot more next year. For the Office of Continuous Improvement, this involves a project of setting up professional learning communities at schools who volunteered to be a part of this work. And from a survey from Dr. Dabrowski, we reached out to principals, set up meetings, and made sure that they wanted to participate in this project, which involved finding a leader at their school, typically the literacy coach, as well as recruiting some teachers who wanted to try out these practices in their classroom. One interesting thing to note is that we specified it can't just be English teachers. We want the writing work to happen across content areas. So the map that you see in front of you is all the schools who are participating with us in this professional learning community right now. The origin of this work really comes from a teacher fellowship that was grant funded from the Gates Foundation, as Amy was talking about with the OTG work. So a little bit of background: in school year 21 and 22, we had a group of teachers who really wanted to work on writing strategies and tested out a few different things and had some initial successes in 2 clusters of ideas: pre-writing strategies and sentence strategies. What we realized is that this fit nicely with some research-based work called the Writing Revolution, And so the next year we pushed it forward with some very specific strategies from the Writing Revolution book, and had students really show success with mastering the writing skills, but also developing a greater sense of independence in their writing. So during school year 23 and 24, we really pushed it further with our teacher fellows and had them strategically sequence different strategies together to get an even greater result. And that work is the basis of the PLCs that we're doing with our 27 schools this year. One of the important things about approaching it with a continuous improvement lens is this approach that Dr. Dabrowski has really championed in this respect, which is that we want to avoid the typical district approach of saying, hey, everybody needs to do just one thing and everybody needs to do it exactly the same way. Because we understand that their teachers that we're working with have very different contexts and their students have very different needs. And so instead of saying that we want a mindset of top-down initiatives with perfect fidelity and everybody's held accountable for doing things one way, in which case we don't really get the learning of what works well in different contexts, we want to learn fast to implement well. So testing out these small changes and having a lot of reflection time, as Dr. Wu was pointing out, that study act portion of the PDSA cycle, so that we can adapt as we learn and say, though there are some changes that we make, this is what's working better in this context or that context. This allows us to find out the good ideas and spread ideas to other people who are implementing it. And with this continuous improvement approach, from the data that we have last year, some interesting things that we noticed. First of all, we were administering MCAP-like assessments within our small group of teacher fellows, and we got some good internal results before we even got to the actual MCAP exam. Just to show you an example, if you focus in on the blue, which is our group of students that we had all year long because they were middle school students instead of high school students, you can see in the beginning of the year test, like the median score on that MCAP-like assessment, which is scored from 0 to 7 according to the state's rubric. Our median score for those students was a 5. But you also notice there was a lot of students who were at the 0, the 1, the 2 level who were really dragging down that sort of 25th to 50th or to 75th percentile there. If you look at the middle of the year scores, you'll see that the median score is still 5, but we've really pulled up those bottom students so that they're not just writing nothing or very little or just copying from the text, but you're actually really attempting the writing tasks. And by the end of the year, we moved up that median score to a 5.5 and pulled up so that the students are really between that 5 and 6 for that 25th to 75th percentile. So that was a good indication that we were really addressing the needs of the students who needed help with writing the most. How did this translate into MCAP scores? Well, if we looked at all of the students in our fellowship who had a score in both school year 22-23 and last year, you can see that the district as a whole did great, like improving those writing scores by about 5%. But of those students who were in our fellowship, we improved to scores by 6.9%. So that was a nice indication of success as well. Furthermore, if we looked at MCAP proficiency on both the writing portion and the reading portion, I want to draw your attention to a couple things. Again, on the left-hand side is the district as a whole, and on the right-hand side is the fellowship students that we were working with here. You notice that we had a greater proportion of students in that blue area who were proficient in both reading and writing, and about a similar proportion who were proficient in reading. And you can also see that in the green area that we had about twice as high a percentage of the students who were proficient in writing. What that tells us is that we were really moving those students who might have been proficient in reading only to get more proficient in both reading and writing. And also some students who may not even have been marked proficient according to the state standards on the reading portion of the test are still doing well enough on the writing because of the instruction that they got from their teachers. So what does this mean for this year? Well, the discovery that came about through these 3 years of the teacher fellowship is that there's really 4 components that are necessary to get students to really internalize the writing strategies from the Writing Revolution book. We need to have that direct instruction, which is exactly what you would think, the teacher's teaching, modeling, having a little bit of individual practice. But then the new part that we don't often see with writing instruction is that days and days of deliberate practice, which is short activities to get students to practice specific parts of the skill. And these are activities that can be merged with the existing curricula, taking a warm-up, for example, and just tweaking it slightly so that it involves writing practice instead of just content practice. We also need to make sure we have some kind of formative assessment, which again comes directly from the curricula that teachers are working with. And a crucial component that our teachers told us about was a quick turnaround revision. Can we get students to look at that piece of writing from the formative assessment and then make some changes which will help them internalize those skills even more? To the right, you'll see a little chart of what this could look like for a teacher, where you can see there's in the blue a little direct instruction, but lots and lots of days of that deliberate practice to reinforce the skills with the students. And this is the work that we're pushing forward to these 27 schools, working with the literacy coaches and some of our teacher fellows who wanted to lead the work at their schools to try and recruit some other teachers and see if they can get this type of instruction going on in their classrooms. And with that, we're wondering if you have any other questions or if you see any other areas and aspects of teaching and learning that could benefit from this type of improvement work. We'd love to hear it.
Thank you all very much for this update. I appreciate the big strategy, the overarching strategy that you all seem to be streamlining to support our students. And it was nice to hear some of the more qualitative information that you all presented around how students are how receptive students are to the different strategies and what we're hearing from them and how we're using that information to support them. I'm curious to, dig a little deeper to know what resources or supports do our principals and school leaders need in really digging deep into the standards, data analysis, and really supporting continuous improvement. Are there specific standards that we're seeing trending across the system that our students are having challenges with and struggling with? And are we supporting teachers and principals really in their leadership capacity, being able to lead schools through data analysis as it relates to the standards that students have to be deemed proficient in on these standardized assessments and elsewhere? So I'm curious to know the supports that principal school leaders are receiving, the resources that they may need in order to elevate their work really around standards-based instruction and data analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Zach. No, go, Zach.
Well, I was going to speak specifically to literacy. I'm not part of the literacy coaching program anymore, but I know this has been a really big focus of their work that someone in the literacy office could speak to even more. The literacy coaches really being those leaders who identify or help the teachers identify the standards within the curricula and understand how their students are doing with those standards, and bringing those data conversations to the collaborative planning of the teachers themselves. It's an interesting question how that translates to principals as well. I will say, as an added thing from the Office of Continuous Improvement, one of the things that we discovered is that even if teachers are really adhering to the standards, what students were missing sometimes was independence and really being able to demonstrate mastery of those standards without the teacher's support and the hand-holding. Because we can do something on the ELA curriculum, for example, a writing task, but if the teacher is kind of walking the students through those assignments through the whole way, that doesn't prepare them to do it independently, like on an MCAP exam, or more importantly, like we want them to be able to do after they graduate and are out in the world of college and career. And so we focus a lot of our effort on shifting that mindset a little bit to it's not just the standards, but can the students achieve those standards independently?
I appreciate that. So how are we, I appreciate the literacy coaches that are in schools. How are we supporting school leaders to lead this work?
Yeah, I think one of the things we are doing as well as we continue to embed continuous improvement approach to the work is continue to give principals professional learning around what continuous improvement is and the habits of an improver. We're going to be doing that at the upcoming Leadership Institute. And so helping them understand that mindset. And then I think the next step from that, Chair McFadden, is to coordinate with teaching and learning in the academics office around how we embed some of that alongside the information we have around standards and instruction, and how we connect those two things together. I think that's a great point and something that we can definitely work on going forward.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll definitely share that with the other members. I believe Dr. Redding Lallinger is joined us as well, but is having a bit of a challenge connecting. So good afternoon to you. I don't have any additional questions. I will make sure that I, synthesize some things for the committee members. So if they have any questions, they'll forward them to you all directly. But thank you for this presentation. Thank you for the work. And really, thank you for that qualitative information. Like, it's always good to hear about how students, how receptive they are to what is actually being decided for them, right? And so it's great to have that information to use in developing strong programming for them. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep. I do not believe that we have anyone signed up for public comment this afternoon, and I think we have 2 items on the procurement agenda. Is that correct?
Good afternoon, Chair McFadden. That is correct.
It's Shabre. Hello, Shabre.
Hello, City Schools family. Yes, so we have 2 procurement items for consideration today. 12.01 Wilson Language Training Corp. And 12.02 TechRow LLC.
I don't have questions around the second one, but the first one, I'm curious to know what schools are using these programs. I'd like to see that. And if we are able to see any correlation to how the students are performing in reading, I'd just be interested to see more of that information. It may be able to live in the evidence of effectiveness, but beyond that, I'm just curious to know if we have that information readily available so that we can just see any correlation there.
Good evening, Brooke Horch, Coordinator Academic Fiscal Operations. I don't believe Heather Blackwell is with us this evening. We did include some brief evidence of effectiveness information, some data from DIBELS, DIBELS 8 from 23-24 and earlier. We do see some correlation data with the use of foundations. Schools do use that currently now, but if there's anything specific, I can reach out to OEA and to the literacy office and get some more specific data.
I'm specifically asking for the schools that are using the programs. And if we can see how those particular schools are performing in reading, it may be, right, something that is not necessarily, because I'm familiar with these programs, I get it. I'm just thinking about the overarching strategy. We're hearing that in some of today's presentation. I'd like to hear or see, and also for the commissioners to know what schools are using these programs, and then what those schools' performances in the area of reading proficiency.
Reading proficiency. Okay, we can absolutely do that.
Yep, and good afternoon, Chair McFadden. This is Chief Dabrowski. Just so Foundations is one of our core sets of literacy materials. So all of our schools actually use that in the K1, 2, and 3 space. So we can certainly do that, but just wanted you to know that is one of our required programs for foundational literacy.
That's good to know. You probably mentioned it before, it probably lives somewhere else, but that's good information to know. I think Just Words was also listed there. And so I'm interested, to see what schools are using those beyond the foundations. Just curious. And I think it will be helpful for the board also to see that. just to gain a larger picture, a perspective of what's happening. Because these are goals for us, right? We have a literacy goal, so it's important that we just have that information. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions about those two items or comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't received anything additionally from other commissioners on the committee. And so if there are questions, they may come, but no one sent anything prior to today's meeting.
Okay, we'll make the requested adjustments.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And with that, everyone, please be kind to each other. Please lead with love. And the board will meet in exec session and a public meeting this coming Tuesday. The board is going to meet in closed session at 3:30, and then the public meeting will begin at 5:30. Thanks everyone for your engagement this afternoon, for your commitment to city schools, to our students. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.